Hi, friend. Ashley here. Welcome to the Unlock Your Dream podcast. I'm here to guide you along your journey to unlocking your dreams to achieve the best life that you can imagine possible. From my journey in medicine as a PA and then some in the corporate world, I always still desired a little bit more out of life. It wasn't until I met some people who had seen their dreams realized that it occurred to me that maybe, just maybe, mine could come true too. Come along with me as we get to know some of these friends of mine and hear their stories of unlocking their dreams. Hey, friend, welcome to Unlock Your Dream podcast this week. We get to have Miss Kaylee with us this week, who is all about everything clean eats, modern style, and honestly living in a little bit of mayhem. She is doing homesteading right, in my opinion. We were just chatting. I feel like a lot of people want to do that all of a sudden back, kind of like we used to do things, but she's able to do it on a ranch. She has goats, she has chickens, she has ducks, she has dogs. So she is really doing it right. And it sounds very overwhelming, but I'm excited to chat with her today, maybe just about how to get started for a lot of us who just kind of want to start to have a little bit more control over our land and our food and honestly some sustainable living. So Kaylee, thank you for making time to be with us today. As you're a mom of two as well, so you're just doing all the things. I love it.
Oh, thank you. It's such an honor, truly. When you texted me, I was like, "Ah, I feel so cool."
You are so
It's
cool.
like you get like imposter syndrome. You're like, you're doing all the things. And I'm like, am I? Because I don't feel like I am, but I guess I am.
I love it. Just one thing at a time. So tell me or us a little
Yes.
bit about how you started with your home journey. I know it probably didn't start the amazing operation that you guys are running now.
No, not even close. And I feel like I never really like intentionally started it. Things just kind of unfolded and then we just kept going with it. So I grew up like very typical suburban, life. I was born in Oklahoma and then we moved to North Georgia when I was 10. So I've lived in Georgia most of my life. But my parents are definitely like very animal driven and like our lifestyle was very much around that. My dad had a hunting lodge and was a hunting guide for bird hunting. And so he raised German short hair pointers. And so I grew up like in a whelping box. So that kind of comes into play a little bit as to how, like, why I am the way that I am with animals and so I think that part of it, growing up with my dad breeding animals, my dad being a hunter, my mom being a homemaker and taking care of the household. And my mom is an incredible caretaker in every aspect, but also with animals. And so I grew up around that. I grew up seeing my parents doing that and being intentional with it. And I also grew up eating food that my dad harvested himself. So that was kind of like a normal thing for me. Whereas I don't know, like, not everybody has that, but I also
Mhm.
grew up in a very like conventional way, 90s kid in a neighborhood. And that became more so when we moved to Georgia. So when we moved to Georgia, my dad still had his hunting lodge, but his guide service he didn't have anymore. And then we weren't like doing the animal stuff as much. But he still was still a huge part of our lives. Like my brother got really into hunting. And then I met my husband in high school. He was super into hunting. And so that has always kind of been a part of it. And then Ryan is a huge outdoorsman. And so he was always like, don't want to live in a neighborhood. I want to live out. He grew up with his parents had like horses and they called it the farm, but it wasn't really a farm. They had horses and it was like a mountain house and it was absolutely beautiful. So um, he had like a little bit of that life and desire. And then I had a little bit of that life and desire. And then when him and I got married, he lived way out and on a bunch of property. And we ended up moving to a smaller piece of property, but we were on 8 acres when we decided to you know, we had our children. And it's really funny. This is like the most random thing ever, but I've always been obsessed with Jewel, the singer. Like she was like my favorite when I was like 8 or 9. She was probably the first like CD I ever got. And when I think Amelia was a baby, I watched The Last Frontier. Have you watched that show?
I haven't. I need to go watch it now.
Okay, so it's the Kilcher family and it's actually Jules' family and
Oh,
her grandfather came over, and it was when they did the Homestead Act in Alaska to get people to like live on the land and homestead. And so she grew up on the homestead in Alaska. She's not really she's in the show a little bit, but it's her whole family. So it's like her dad, her brothers, her uncle, their kids, and they homestead. And I remember living out and having Amelia as a baby and, you know, that phase of life. And I watched the show and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just so cool to me. And so we just like randomly got 3 chickens that Ryan's cousin gifted to us. And that was kind of the beginning. Well, I always say that chickens are like the gateway to homesteading. And people say that all the time. And it's true. Because I think once you experience having an animal and that animal, you care for that animal, but that animal in return gives you a source of food. It's a very truly a life-changing experience. So yeah, we got 3 chickens. I think Amelia was 2-ish, and there was a big garden on the property. So I started my hand at gardening, and a lot of people wouldn't believe me because I've gotten pretty good at it, but I was really bad at it. And I didn't enjoy it, and it was very overwhelming. But I just kept trying, and there were, you know, times that I didn't do it, and then there were times that I did. And but yeah, it was just kind of having the chickens and having the eggs, and then, you know, gardening here and there and seeing the kind of food that you could get and the quality of the food. And this was kind of around the same time that I was going through a lot of health issues. And then I had Reed, and Reed had a lot of health issues. And I went through my own, you know, journey of healing myself and really looking at like what I was eating, all of those things. So I got like hyper, like in tune to that, and really, you know, cutting out certain foods, healing my gut, healing him, wanting better for my family, starting to pay attention to ingredients, you know, and then it just kind of literally snowballed from there. So it was just a desire to fuel myself and my family with the best food that I possibly could. And then the more research I did, I, you know, obviously started to find that minimal ingredients, whole foods, if you can grow some of it yourself, that's like the best thing that you could ever feed yourself with. So it just kind of started there. We ended up moving to get closer into town because we were like 45 minutes from a grocery store. So we were pretty out there, and it was getting hard with 2 kids, just spending a lot of time in the car, and just like wasn't a good balance anymore. So we found the property that we're on now, and it's, you know, smaller. It's about half the acreage that we were on then. The irony, like I have so many more animals now.
Yes.
Like, where we lived before was set up so beautifully for what I'm doing. And now I'm trying to raise animals and homestead on a ridge. But I think that that's a huge part of it, is that you just do with what you have. Like you figure it out, and you can do a lot. Like you can do a lot with, you know, the space that you have. So that has been part of the journey too, is just kind of figuring out what we can do with what we have and having to get very creative with it. Like we can't do things as like conventionally if we had a bunch of pasture and we had a big barn and all of those things, but we still make it work. So that has been part of the adventure as well. So that's where we're at. We're just carving out little nuggets of our ridge that we're on and trying our best to raise animals and to raise food, to grow food, and do the best we can to fuel ourselves. But also it's part of the lifestyle too. It just changes your perspective so much about everything. But it's hard. It's really hard. There are days where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. But then there's those moments that I eat my meal that I've completely cultivated here with my own hands, with my husband's hands, with my children's hands. And I'm like, I would take all the hard days, and it's totally worth it. So
so much good in
that's
there.
a little piece.
that you were just saying, I think it does sound so overwhelming, but it's like 3 chickens in a garden and you can be homesteading or use what you have, even people that maybe don't have, like they just have a postage stamp. You can do something. And so I love that aspect of just like do
Yeah.
what you can.
Even if you just make bread, like if you pick one thing that you want, I mean, not just make bread, because making bread is a lot of work, but say you live in an apartment, you can make your own bread. You can home make all of your own bread products. So it's just picking something to cut out that food chain, that supply chain. And it's also it's good for your body and it's good for the environment, but it's also so good for your soul. Like it's such
Mm,
a healing therapeutic thing to cultivate your own food, to nourish yourself with something that you have grown, whether that's a vegetable or sourdough bread or having your own eggs. Like it can be an herb. You can have pots of herbs. And when you sit down to eat some eggs and you put your own basil that you grew, it's just very rewarding. And that adds up. Like that really changes, your perspective just with life in general. And you're going to fail, but it's when you fail, I never learn anything when things go well. Like it's
so
all
good.
the times that I've completely bombed and completely failed. And then that's why I'm so appreciative of it, because I'm like, this is so much work. This is so hard. And we have lost such a connection with those things because we're just so used to getting it and it's wrapped in a package, and we didn't have any skin in that game. We weren't connected to how we got that at all. And it's just a
Yes.
very empty thing to experience. There's no meaning behind it.
Yeah, so good. I love that you said like food basically, I don't know how much it healed you, but a lot of your healing journey was from what you were putting into your body, which I think says a lot about no matter what people want to do, but maybe just take the time to read the label and question what's going in and what is this really doing to me and my kids. I mean, you're fueling for your kids too, which is just so beautiful.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, they just have such a different perspective, and it's really neat to
Mm.
see because I had to undo so much. And I'm
Yeah.
just, it's not perfect, and they'll go through their own journey, and who knows what that's going to look like. But I'm really glad that I'm able to expose them to this stuff. So, maybe they veer off from it, and that's okay. But those tools will always be there. Like, they're not going to have to do all of the research that I've had to do and the learning and the unlearning. I feel like I've had to do more unlearning than anything.
Mm.
And I think that's where a lot of people are at right now. I think our eyes have been open to, like what we were saying, like we've been sold this platform, not platform, but like this lifestyle that we thought was going to fuel us and that we thought was going to make us happy. And it's not. Like it has made people mentally, emotionally, and physically sick. And it is what you're ingesting, but it's also the process of it. Like that's what I've learned so much about eating and health and wellness. It has nothing to do with, I mean, it does, but it's such a small portion of that. Like it's so much bigger. Like if all of the other things aren't in line, it doesn't matter. Like you can be great at reading a label and you can cut out certain things or whatever, but if you're not a healthy whole person, like it's not really going to matter too much,
That's
if
so
that makes
good.
any sense at all.
Really does. No, it really does. It's so much bigger than just the one, like we were kind of talking about, the one habit stems in, it's across your whole lifestyle, which is so big. Did you have anybody to
Yeah.
help
Well,
you?
and I think,
Did you do all your research on your own to start out?
um, yes and no. I mean, it's definitely been like learn as you go kind of thing. And that's just how I am. I don't learn well by reading things. Like I mean, I will here and there, but I kind of just dive in and then I figure it out as I go. But I have like a lot of help from my husband physically. Like he's so good about like creating the infrastructure, and I have these crazy wild ideas, and then he makes that a reality, but like reins me in. He's like, okay, I see Like, I understand that this is what you think, but this is what we can actually do. So we're a really good team in that sense. Like, I am the dreamer. I'm the one that's going to take the risk. I'm the one that's like has these crazy ideas, but he's very realistic and very responsible when it comes to that kind of stuff. So he materializes my ideas, but he's not the type that would go after that. And so that's where we just kind of like fit really well together. So like we're a really good team, and he does have experience with animals. And, you know, like I said, he rode horses, he's an outdoorsman, he hunts, he worked at a dairy in college. Like he has exposure to kind of like pieces of that lifestyle. So we have just kind of like figured it out together. I, you know, will follow a lot of people on Instagram, which has been like a huge thing. There's so many like homestead accounts, and now there's like homestead mamas, which is really cool. And then, so that's like a page on Instagram that like pulls women together from all over the place that homestead, and their moms and homemakers and all of that. And some of them work full time, some of them don't, and they're all, you know, in different capacities. So I found that like a year ago, and that has been like a game changer because I've met some really awesome women through that community, and now I'm in like this goat community, and that has turned into this whole thing. But I always laugh. I'm like, oh, what I would have done to have these women, you know, 2 or 3 years ago when I started, because I was just like fumbling and figuring it out. But I think I had the confidence to do it because I had been around animals so much. Like, I've never had goats, but I'm like, surely I can do this. Like, I'm very comfortable with that. So I always just kind of like go, I'm like crazy. I don't really think about it. Every animal we've gotten has literally been like on a whim. Like, it's never like, I'm always like, we should get ducks. And then like 3 hours later, I'm like, I have ducks. And then I just figure it out. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing with these things, but I just I just go with it. I think I have like a really good connection to my intuition, which I'm very, very thankful for. And that was always cultivated in me as a kid. And so I have these desires, and, you know, I've always wanted goats, and I was like, I'll just get two and then we'll see where it turns into. And now I have like an entire situation. And I'm milking 3 does every morning. And I never would have thought, when I got goats, I would have never thought that that's where this would lead. It wasn't an intentional, like, this is my game plan. It was like, I'm just going to do this because it sounds fun and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I love to just following along on your Instagram story. It's like the days when you have hives because of allergies or all the things. You know, it's hard work. I like that you said it's not all this like pretty Instagram, like put a bow on it, this beautiful lifestyle. But like you said, when you have that plate of food, like you have literally blood, sweat, and tears work to make it happen. But what a reward on the other side for you and your family. What a gift.
Yeah, it is. And it teaches you so much about life, because with having animals and growing your own food and trying to figure things out, like, a lot of things can go wrong. And it's really hard and it's scary. And I lose sleep at night a lot, especially when babies are being born and I'm raising small animals, or, you know, babies, and so many things come up, and we've dealt with a lot of health things, and we've had to figure it out. And I've messed up, and things have happened, you know, knock on wood, nothing major, but there has been things that it's because of human error that, you know, we've lost a chick, or you know, a goat got sick, and it was avoidable, but I didn't know what I was doing, or I didn't ask the right questions, or, you know, so you constantly are having to swallow that, and it's really hard. You're like,
Yeah.
like this morning, it was one of those mornings when I was down at the barn, and I was like, I am so annoyed with everybody right now. Like, it's muddy, it's rainy, it's a mess, it's frustrating. Everyone's acting insane because they've been cooped up in an area for 2 days, and our routine is completely off. And I want to like pull my hair out, but you just power through it. Like, you just have to keep pushing through. And then, you know, it changes your perspective on life. It puts things into such a perspective, truly. Like, you just deal with it.
Yeah, so good. It's like one of those things, like, is it gonna matter in 5 years? No, like, it's gonna be a good day. Like, you choose, like you said, you're going back to kind of our roots as a culture, where, like, we've done this for generations, and we've just lost touch with that. And it's not all rainbows and beautiful all the time, but what comes out of it really is truly very beautiful. So I respect your
Yeah.
discipline for all your animals.
Yeah, discipline is a muscle. You have to work a lot, and it's not something that I'm always naturally great at. Like, they always say, I always see people talk about the difference in motivation and discipline, and I think that that's such a huge thing. And whether that's milking goats or doing a workout or journaling or whatever you're choosing it to be, do something that requires you to flex and work your discipline, because you're not always going to be motivated. I'm not motivated to do 90% of this stuff every day. There are so many mornings where I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, that's good to hear
But
too, though.
I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. Do what?
That's good to hear too. It's not all just like, yay, I can't wait to get up and go like milk the goats this morning and, all the things,
No. Yeah, I mean, there's a huge romantic side of homesteading, and that's what I fell in love with when I
Mhm.
watch people do it. And the idea of doing that, it is very romantic. And it really is. You have those moments all the time, but there are there's the other side of the spectrum where it's not, it's a mess, and it's frustrating, and it's hard, and it's sad, and it's disappointing, and it's stressful, but the good definitely outweighs the bad. And I'm so thankful for the lessons that it has taught me and my kids, and where it's like bonded Ryan and I even more because it's something we do together.
Yep.
Yeah, it's worth it.
I love that. What, if any, tips do you have for people kind of going into this new season? Is it like time to start spring gardening, thinking of that stuff? Or if you want to get chicks, is the spring a good time to do it? Kind of what's going into the early part of the new year?
Yeah. So right now it's kind of like in the homestead world, you're not like in a lull because there's always like stuff, but it's nice to honor the season of rest in the winter time, and you're not really
Mhm.
gardening too much. The chickens kind of slow down on stuff, so you're not having to like manage that as much. You're not normally brooding chicks or ducks. I wish that I would have pushed having these ducklings out a little bit. But it's fine. We're making it work. It's just more difficult in the winter time because of heat and weather and all of that stuff. So
Yep.
it's kind of nice to just like have this moment to take a breath. But yeah, I mean, I'm already thinking, oh no, I'm behind. Like it's always like that. There's always something that you're like, I need to be getting together. So it's always different depending on what area you live in your climate, but I should have already started planting my spring garden, because we have a very long growing season. So I can start cultivating plants for my spring and summer. I will start growing them in February. So I'll start seeds in February and then get all of the baby plants growing, and then put everything out once the chance of frost is gone and all of that fun stuff. So you really have to learn your area, your weather, what grows good when, what you can grow, what's frost tolerant, what's not. There's all of these things that go into consideration with gardening. So that's definitely like January, February is when I start doing that. You typically want to, like, if you want chickens, I think spring is a fantastic time to get chicks. Even summer is really nice if you wanted ducklings or if you wanted chicks. Anytime that it's warm, because that's the biggest thing. You have to really regulate the temperature.
Sure.
So anytime in the spring is great. And then that's when babies are typically born. So naturally, goats, for example, they go into heat in the fall time right now, like rut, same as like deer or any animals like that. And then they have a 5-month gestation. So they're going to be having babies typically from March to June. So you kind of have that like cycle. So they have babies in March or April. you're going through kidding season is what we call it. And then that's always mayhem. Like that's the busiest time. And of course it falls in the exact same time that you're, planting your garden and whatnot. But then you kind of get all the babies situated, you get into your milk routine, and then it's kind of harvest. So summertime, it's like your big harvest time. That's when like your garden is at its best because it's warm and sunny and it's producing a lot. And then that comes along with preserving and doing all those things. So I'm still learning that. I'm still trying to find my timing on everything. And it also changes every year because the weather changes every year and it's not always the same. So you kind of have to like figure out what works best and, pivot based on that. But, you just pick one thing, pick two things, pick four things if you're crazy like me. And be like, this is what we're doing. We're going to like raise baby chicks and baby ducks and baby goats and plant a garden. But no, you definitely don't have to do that. I think cultivating seeds is really cool. Starting your own seeds is a really cool process. So that would be something fun to look into come early spring. You could already, like, you're in Charleston. So like your growing
Yep.
season is probably similar to ours, but maybe a little bit longer. So that's always something fun to do. And then you get to, see the fruits of your labors come summer.
That's so fun. Yeah, I think especially being a mom, I feel like it would be something super fun to do with the kids. Like just as our son is, little now, but as we grow up doing that together, it just seems really fun for a family too. So that's so inspiring.
Yeah, for sure. And they get so much joy out of it. Like I remember Amelia when we first got chickens and just like her going down and getting an egg. Like her mind was blown, and that's such a cool thing. And kids, if you're trying to get them to eat healthier, or you're trying to get them off of screens, like we all are. Like we're constantly trying to mitigate all of the exposures that our children have that are not great. And I think this lifestyle is the best way to combat that because there are so many things that need to be done that they don't have time to do that. Like Amelia gets up in the morning, she has to go take care of the ducks. Reed gets up in the morning, he has to feed the chickens. Like there are things that they have, to do. So they're not just going straight to a tablet or a screen or whatever. I mean, they do have mornings and it's always something we're having to manage, but I just think about if I didn't have those tasks for them, it would be
Yeah.
so much harder to manage. And like with the puppy, like he's got us all outside so much more because I want to let him out. And I'm like, okay, we need to go take Ridge out for a walk and we need to walk the perimeter and train him. And the kids have loved doing that. So, just with getting him, it has completely changed, their day to day. And they've probably spent a solid 2 to 3 hours outside more. And you have a kid that's inside and they're like, I'm bored. And I'm like, well, guess what? You can go clean the goat stall. Like, like there's just so much to be done at all times. They're like, I'm this, that, or they're fighting or, whatever. I'm like, okay, go to the garden and I want you to pick beans for 30 minutes. And they have to stand out there in the sun with their bare feet, with their hands in the soil, and they have to pick beans. And then they get to cook those beans later and then they love them. And so it's just this really cool full circle moment that you get to experience with kids that, you wouldn't experience that in any other way.
No, that's so beautiful.
Yeah. And they'll, like, if you're trying to get your kids to eat more, whole foods and stuff like that, like there's no better way. My kids will eat anything out of the garden, but if I were to go to a grocery store, buy that food, put it in the refrigerator, and they had no connection to it, they're not going to eat it.
Wow.
Reed doesn't eat beets and kale and any of that stuff, but he does out of the garden. He'll eat it straight from the garden. Like he's just out there and he starts munching on stuff. Like, and it to me, that's like a window into like humans in general. Like that's just what drives us to want to nourish our body with these things. Like we grew it with our own hands. We're going to be a lot more apt to be like eating that kind of stuff, fueling our bodies with that kind of stuff, and then feeling like that sense of accomplishment, which is huge.
That's so awesome. Well, I know we're winding down on time, but is there anything else? Obviously, I'll share your Instagram handle here. Where can people find you? Anything you want to share from you guys, or things you recommend, or lifestyle, or anything else that you want to share with our guests today?
I am on Instagram. I used to have a blog that is extremely outdated. That is like something that I have like completely fallen off the wagon with, but I think my priorities shifted and that's okay. But yeah, I'm on Instagram at Clean Modern Mayhem. I am terrible at actually posting anything, but I love sharing in stories. And I just like to share little snippets of our day and just really to make people smile and let them see our animals and what we're doing and hopefully inspire people to want to try and maybe do a few things out of their comfort zone and in
Yeah,
turn get them healthier and happier.
I love that, girl. It certainly has inspired us. So we are super grateful for y'all. I love following along on your stories and seeing the animals and the kids. It's a really bright light amidst some
Thank
crazy
you.
screens throughout the day. So, well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for taking time away from your kids and the farm. And I'm sure all the tasks that you have going on this
Yes.
afternoon. But thanks for hopping on, and I look forward to catching up soon. Okay, friend, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for spending time with me. Feel free to share this podcast with another friend who it may inspire. Leave a review to possibly be featured at the beginning of another episode, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the stories that could help unlock your dream for you.